Hi, everyone, and welcome to the Fake Love and Flying Monkeys podcast. My name's Nova Gibson, and I am your host. My area of expertise is in supporting victims and survivors of narcissistic abuse and other toxic relationships. I'm the principal counselor at Brighter Outlook Narcissistic Abuse Counseling Service, and I'm also the author of Fake Love, Understanding and Healing from Narcissistic Abuse. In this podcast, we're going to be talking about everything from the initial pink cloud you find yourself on at the start through to the horrific discard and the powerful trauma bond that keeps you hooked. So take your imaginary seat on the roller coaster that is narcissistic abuse, and don't forget to subscribe to this podcast so you never miss an episode of Fake Love and Flying Monkeys. Hi, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Fake Love and Flying Monkeys. Today, I am so excited about the guest we have. This lady is so inspirational after the trauma, the abuse that she experienced, and the healing journey that she embarked on, and which ended and culminated in her not just being a therapist, but gaining a Ph.D. to help other victims and survivors. Now, many of you will have heard of my beautiful guest, and her name is Dr. Nay, formerly known as Dr. Nadine Macaluso. Now, I'll just tell you a little bit about Dr. Nay, as she likes to be called. Dr. Nadine Macaluso is known to her patients as Dr. Nay. She is the real life inspiration behind Naomi Belfort's character in The Wolf of Wall Street. She survived a turbulent 8-year marriage to Jordan Belfort, marked by abuse, greed, and trauma. Following her experiences, Dr. Macaluso relocated to California. Her journey of trauma and healing inspired her to return to school at age 39, where she earned her master's in counseling and a Ph.D. in somatic psychotherapy. She further specialized with a 2-year postdoctoral training in the Neuro-affective Relational Model, NARM. As a therapist, Dr. Macaluso combines her education and personal experiences to help others heal from trauma. Her practice focuses on assisting patients in connecting with their authentic self, fostering confidence, resilience, and agency. So I would like to welcome to the Fake Love and Flying Monkeys podcast, Dr. Nay. Thank you so much for joining us, Dr. Nay.
Oh, thank you for having me. I love the name of your podcast.
Oh, thank you. You'd be surprised how many people say that. It's a bit quirky, isn't it?
Yeah.
Oh, my goodness, Dr. Nay, look, I saw the movie, okay, and quite a few years ago when it first came out, and it was an eye-opener. I don't know that I enjoyed it, and I don't know that I didn't enjoy it. It was kind of just, it was one of those movies where you just think, oh my goodness, that happened. That happened to someone.
Yes.
That's real.
That's
So
real.
I would love it if you could talk to my followers about your experience, because the character, the main character is based on you. So yeah, I'd love it if you could talk to everyone about your experience.
Yeah, sure. So yes, the movie The Wolf of Wall Street was made about my life. I mean, it was really made through the lens of my ex-husband, right? Jordan Belfort, The Wolf of Wall Street. But of course, I was married to him during that time, so hence I am in the movie. And the movie was very accurate. When I was with him over 25 years ago, I was in the quintessential trauma bond. Now, unbeknownst to me, of course, because we weren't talking about trauma bonds, we weren't talking about narcissism and flying monkeys and all of these terms. And I was even in therapy back then, and we weren't talking about these terms. And so, yes, I fell head over heels in love with him, major love bomber, of
Yeah.
course, like they all are, with the gifts and the flowers and the promises of forever and we'll be soulmates till
Yeah.
eternity. And
Yeah.
I was 22 at the time, so I fell hook, line, and sinker for it,
Yeah.
as most young girls do, I think, right? If someone presents themselves to us, we believe that this is who they are,
Yeah.
but I didn't
Why would
know
they
that.
be lying to you?
Right,
They're
right.
putting you on
Why
that
would they be
pedestal.
lying to me?
Yeah.
But I didn't know there was a whole nother side to him, till we were married.
And you were
And
enmeshed.
yeah, and we were enmeshed, correct.
Yeah. How did you meet initially? Like you said, you were 22, so yeah, very young and vulnerable to an older man. How did you meet, and how did he
Yeah,
cement
so,
that
so
relationship
that's
with
the
the love
interesting
bombing?
part. He wasn't that much older than me because
Oh,
I was
sorry, I
He's
beg your
only
pardon.
28, or I think 23 and 28, really, when we finally really got together. And but how we met was just like the movie shows, in that I went to a party with my boyfriend, and it wasn't as big a party as they show in the movie. But
Mm.
I went to this party and all these people were there, and I was like, God, these people are acting a little strange. Little did I know they were all on Quaaludes. I didn't even really know what a Quaalude was back then. And then
I still don't know exactly what they do. I
I
haven't
think
been
it's
on
like a
club.
muscle relaxant, really.
Yeah.
That's, if I was to describe it to somebody,
Yeah.
it's kind of like that. But and then, as the movie depicts too, someone exposed themselves to me, and I felt so much shame as a young girl. I was
Mm.
said to my boyfriend, "Oh my God, we got to get out of here," and we left. But I guess he had set his sights on me, and was
Mm.
supposedly, getting separated, as they say, from his wife,
Yeah.
and and he pursued me.
Yeah. Yeah.
And we went on a date. About 6 months later, we went on our first date because I was traveling and modeling, and I don't know what else he was doing, but we ended up going on our first date. And that, as they say, the rest is history,
The rest is history.
or
Uh,
herstory, or herstory.
History. So, Dr. Nate, tell us, if you will, a little bit more about how you recognized and when you really recognized that this was toxic. Tell us about the coercive control and just the build
Sure.
to that light
Yeah.
bulb moment.
Yeah, sure. So again, I'm so young. I don't know anything. I'm believing Disney movies and, oh, what was it back then? Pretty Woman, like someday my prince is going to come. So I thought, oh boy, here's my prince. And I would say about 3 months in, the coercion started with, I'm not going to marry you. I'm not going to date you anymore if you're not going to marry me. And I was
Mm.
like, well, I don't want to get married. I'm 22, 23 years old. I'm not ready to get married. And then I'm not going to marry you if you're not going to have children. So the coercion around real value-oriented decisions
Yes.
started. And now back then I didn't know what it was. I just was like, oh, he just loves me so much.
Yeah, it's
I
because
would
he cares
fight.
about you. Yeah.
Yeah, I would fight back because I am from Brooklyn. But I was no match for his rage, really.
Yeah.
And so I would acquiesce.
Yeah.
And
And
then
you
that was when I started like, this doesn't seem right. But now I'm all confused because all the love bombing happens,
yeah.
right? And I'm supposedly in love.
Yeah.
So I just think all of this is done for the betterment of us.
Yeah. You're trying to reconcile those abusive behaviors with the person you remember who, put you on
Exactly.
that pink pedestal. It's easier to think that they really are the nice person than the person who's abusing you.
Correct, correct. And that's a term that I talk about in my book a lot, called cognitive dissonance.
Mm.
So what happens is that, I call the mask, the first guy, Romeo, and they're so loving and generous, kind and helpful and wonderful. Then after time, the mask falls and they become Dirty John, right?
Mm.
And so as you describe, you're constantly in a relationship trying to reconcile. Is he Romeo? Is he Dirty John? Is he Romeo? Is he Dirty John? But
Yeah.
hoping that he's Romeo.
Yeah. Yeah. hoping, and our brain comes up with all of these ways of getting what we want, doesn't it?
Yes,
To get the drug back, to get that nice person back, which
yes.
means, you've got to forget about the abuse, or at least minimize it.
Yeah, minimize, dismiss it, rationalize it, right? All those things. Yes. But you have to do, I had to do that to stay in.
Yeah.
The highs were so high and the lows were so low.
Yeah, absolutely. They're polarized, aren't they? Complete
Yes.
opposites. Doesn't make any sense. So you had children. How soon in the relationship did he coerce you into doing that?
Yeah.
Clearly,
Quick,
it was
quickly.
something you weren't ready to do at that time, which is
Right.
a
I
problem.
always wanted children. And
Yeah,
I mean, I adore my children. They're my best friends. My daughter's a therapist. My son's a musician, a businessman. So I'm thrilled it happens, but I wasn't ready at that time because
yeah,
my parents had gotten divorced when I was 6. And so in my mind, I had some ridiculous number. I don't want to have kids till I'm 30, but that was just my own choice. And he
yeah.
definitely took that choice away from me. So I was pregnant at my wedding, but I had 2 miscarriages
Oh,
before
yes.
I finally had my daughter. Yeah, so right away, I mean, it was his way or the highway.
Yeah, yeah. You were being indoctrinated into that that way of life, weren't you? Where you're not allowed to have any needs, and it's all about him,
Yes,
and all the while threatening you or implying abandonment, if you
yes,
don't do what he wants you to do.
exactly, exactly. And I have a very agreeable personality, which I write about in my book.
Hmm.
I talk about the 5-factor model and the personality traits, often of the victim. And so I score very high in agreeableness, which is not a bad trait. It means that I'm cooperative and altruistic and trusting, right? But in the hands of the wrong person, that gets weaponized.
Yes, all those amazing traits used against you. And that also, I imagine what he would have tried to destroy after you were hooked. The very things he said he loved about you would have been things that he tried to take away from you, because uh, you appear better than him, because you do have all those amazing qualities. Is that something that you resonates with you now that you remember the abuse?
Yeah, I think, if we look at it through a power and control lens, right, the trauma bond, that coercive control is used to minimize, diminish you, right,
Yeah,
break you down, instill fear into you
yeah,
to be able, you're easier to control when your self-esteem is lower, when you feel
yeah,
fearful, right?
yeah,
So then you're walking on eggshells and you don't know what's going to happen. And so, yeah. I do think
yeah,
all of those tactics are in an effort to continue to have control.
yeah. Um, it must have been so confusing for you to try
Mhm.
and reconcile what was going on, the abuse, with the person who loved on you. Did he engage?
Yes.
Did he engage you, or bait you, uh, as most narcissists do, into that reactive abuse where he
Oh,
would kind
sure.
of
Yeah.
flip the script?
Yes, 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 yes.
Yeah.
Yes, I definitely had reactive abuse when I was in that relationship. Because again, I am from Brooklyn. I'm pretty strong-willed myself. And that goes also against this, myth that these women are meek and mild and
Mm.
seem like that, right?
Yeah.
So I wasn't exactly like that. So yeah, I did engage in reactive abuse. And that's another way that I experienced cognitive dissonance. And what I write about is that I had cognitive dissonance about him. Is he good or is he bad? But I had cognitive dissonance about myself. Like, who am I? Am I
Yeah.
crazy? Because
Yeah.
he's making me act crazy, right? So I'm like,
Yeah.
lost my standards. I'm acting crazy. And then you have cognitive dissonance about the relationship, right?
Yes. You're
Relationship,
you're
healthy or
acting in a way, though, that's really outside your character,
right, right.
and whereas he's in the difference is in the intent, isn't it? You're protecting yourself, defending
Exactly.
yourself, and his
Exactly.
intent is to abuse you, to punish you. But it's
Yes.
the goal is to make you feel crazy, and it works, doesn't
It
it? Yeah,
works. Yeah. And you bring up such an important point. The intention behind the behavior is everything.
yeah. Yeah, we hear so often, don't we, where well, I do, speaking with my clients, when they talk about, going to see their divorce lawyer, and the lawyers call it a high conflict
Right.
divorce, when only 4 to 6% of cases actually reach court. And I know that's the jargon they have to use, but we know there's a power imbalance in those
Right.
relationships.
Of
And
course.
they go, oh, it's tit for tat, War of the Roses. No, there's the
No.
abuser abusing intentionally, and there's the victim reacting. But both behaviors sometimes look the same, and they need to know the difference between victim and
They,
abuser.
they do. And that brings me to another good point. I'm glad you brought that up. So there has to be two things, right, for a trauma bond, the power imbalance, right, as you talk about, right?
Yeah,
So one person has the power and they have it, maybe they have more resources. Just the very fact that you love them, they have the power. Just the
yeah,
very fact that you depend on them, they can have power.
yeah,
Right. And so, or like my ex-husband, he had the power also because I feared him. And then they have to have the intermittent reinforcement, which is that, Dirty John Romeo,
yeah,
the extreme good experiences and the extremely bad experiences create extreme feelings in me. And that's the actual bond, is that intermittent reinforcement is what keeps the bond.
yeah, yeah. The kind of like, when you're sitting on one of the a poker machine, or I think you call them slot machines in the
We call them
in the
slot
States.
machines, right? And you're
Yeah,
waiting to get,
yeah, you sit there, and the casino's going to go broke if you get a payout
right.
every 5 spins. So they've got to make it intermittent to make the reward even more enticing.
That's right.
And
That's right. That's right. So, and that's what, and that's what makes it so confusing.
yeah,
So there are, and you bring up such a good, important point about, it does look similar when you're engaged in reactive abuse, but unless you're educated about it, you don't know.
yeah. Oh my goodness. Like, I really wish we could get this across to the courts, especially the family court, who do look at those behaviors and think, well, they're as bad as each other. Or, even the police, and most police do an amazing job, but
Yes.
some police are manipulated by the abuser, and the actual victim gets the restraining order. And it's
Of course, that happens all the time. I write about in my book, I give an example of a story like that because I
yeah,
use four stories, and one of them is where the victim gets arrested.
yeah, yeah.
Because they're all real. All the stories in my book are real,
Wow.
unfortunately.
Yeah.
Unfortunately. Yeah.
Oh gosh. So, Dr. Nade, tell us, if you will, talk to us a little bit about the movie. What was
Mhm.
that like when you saw this person, the Australian, beautiful Australian Margot Robbie, playing
Yeah.
you on the big screen, number one. And number two, how accurate was that? And number three, were there any kind of negative or positive kind of repercussions from the movie?
Yeah, so when I first, well, first of all, my ex wrote a book, right? So first it was the book, The Wolf of Wall Street. So I understood that he was doing that, which was enough of a disaster for me because I'm like, I finally left this Greek tragedy. I'm rebuilding my life and I get sucked back in. And then I hear it's going to be a movie. And I'm like, okay. So luckily I've been in therapy my whole life, right? So I've been processing all of this ad nauseum.
Yeah.
And so I processed it a lot. I even did a lot of dream therapy around it. And then finally, one day I said, you know what, Nadine, you just have to surrender. This is bigger than you. You're not going to stop Martin Scorsese and Leonardo DiCaprio from making this movie. And so I just surrendered, and I just kept living my life. And, meeting Margot was wonderful. She was lovely and she nailed it. She met me to get my ridiculous accent that I have, which must have been hard for her, having an Australian accent.
Yeah.
But she really nailed it and she did a good job. And the ironic thing, the movie came out in 2013. I think I got licensed in 2013 or 14. I got my doctorate in 2015.
Yeah.
I can't remember when, but sometime around that time, I was getting all these degrees and building my practice. And I was like, who the hell is going to want to come to me as a therapist? Because I made them change my name, but people could still figure it out. But what happened was that people said to me, you went through this and you came out like this. We want
Yes.
to come see you because,
You're an inspiration. Yeah.
yeah, I didn't think of it like that at first, of course.
No, and I wouldn't have thought of that either. That if that had have been me going through that, telling everyone that I went through this and I was really negatively impacted. It traumatized me. It would kind of be a natural thought to think, "Well, maybe people are going to think that I'm not the best person to come and see," but
Exactly.
actually, there's no one better than
I
you
know. It's
because
funny.
you understand implicitly what they went through, number one. And
That's
number two, you are the shining role model that lets people know that there is light, that there's a light at the end of the tunnel, and you can heal after this type of narcissistic abuse, toxic relationship, betrayal, all of that. You can and will heal, even though it doesn't feel like it at the time.
Oh, well, thank you for that. Yeah, I mean, I didn't think that at the moment, but then it did happen. And, I wish I could say I had some like grand scheme, that the movie came out. I was like, I'm going to work with women, but really I wanted to work with everybody. And I did. I worked with everybody for years, personality disorders, mood disorders, couples, anxiety, depression. But what happened was all these smart, kind, beautiful women were coming into my office being coercively controlled. They were in trauma bonds. They were being manipulated, financial abuse, physical abuse. And I said, we have a problem. And so, being a true academic that I am, because I love to research, I went back to the research. And that's when I started to research trauma bonds and pathological personalities and dark tetrad and all of these things. And I wrote my book. And then I just made it my life's mission to help women everywhere. And then the best part is I get to exploit the movie to do it.
Well, if you're going to be abused and traumatized like that, if there's, some kind of good karma that comes out, then you deserve that. And you should, and
Oh,
glad
thank
you
you.
did
Yeah.
get that for yourself because you certainly deserve it. So, Dr. Nay, are there any kind of moments that were really awful for you in the relationship that you would talk about that maybe weren't mentioned in the movie? Because I do remember reading, and I remember you telling me before we hit record that it was all through his lens. Now, of course, a narcissist is going to put their own spin on it, and they're most of the time they're not going to be portrayed as bad as they are, and there's going to be two stories there perhaps. But was there anything in the movie that you remember in the relationship that would be something that would also help victims to know that they're not alone and that this
Yeah,
anyone?
you know, the thing was that the movie again was through his lens. And the
Yeah,
ironic is that in the movie, he shows me like throwing water in his face. I never did that,
yeah, yeah,
right? I never threw water in his face. I should have,
yeah.
but I never did that. And we never fought about women. I never got angry at him about other women. I always got angry at him about his drug addiction.
Yeah. So that's what I mean about
Yeah,
the spin he
the
put on it.
spin.
He flipped those roles in the obviously the book. The movie was inspired by the book. And the movie making out like you were engaging in a high conflict relationship, like
Yes,
these were
yes.
relationship issues rather than issues of abuse. That's what was
Yes,
implied.
there was no, I never got fought with him once about a woman, ever once, because first of all, I'm not that jealous. And second of all, I really didn't know what he was doing. And I have avoidant attachment, so it's just not the way I operate.
Yeah.
Um, you know, and it was so many fights about the drug addiction because that was what really scared me. And that was what scared me, of course, for my children.
Yeah.
And yeah, and
Yeah.
that was when he actually did get physical with me, not the way the movie shows. The movie says I tell him I'm going to take your kids. What I tell him when he does finally get physical with me is I said to him, I'm not going to sit here and watch you kill yourself.
Yeah.
All of these fans sit around and just watch you kill yourself. I'm not going to do it. So
Yeah.
you're gonna go to rehab or I'm leaving you.
Yeah, so
And
he's
that was and the whole
completely flipped that script, hasn't he?
he put
Portraying you as that vindictive, vengeful woman, scorned, who's jealous of all the other women in his life, and really you were trying to protect your family from a drug addicted partner. And the other thing I heard in what you just said, Dr. Nay, was him making himself out to be this wanted commodity. He's so
oh, good point.
desirable because you're
Yes,
jealous of all these other women.
yes, that's a good point. I hadn't looked at it like that. But
Yeah,
yes, that's true. And you know, even with his abuse, his drug addiction was so rampant that when I knew I was being abused, but I don't know I had so many words for it because until he did get physical, I didn't understand coercive control. I didn't
yeah.
know that that was abuse,
It's
right?
so insidious, though,
It's so
isn't it, Dr.
insidious
Nay? And it
and nobody
starts off under the guise
did.
of caring. I want to
Yes,
ring you 10 times a day because I care about you. I want to help you
that's
shop your
right.
clothes because I care about you.
That's
Yeah,
right. That's right. And so, and his addiction was so out of control that it really was front and center, even though it was part of the abuse, but the abuse was really secondary,
yeah,
right? Because he was so out of control with the drug addiction. I could really only deal with one issue at a time.
yeah,
Um, so yeah, so there were different things in the movie, but then there were a lot of things about him in the movie that were very true, you
yeah,
know. And at the end of the day, I didn't mind the way it was portrayed in the movie, honestly, because I think it could have been a lot worse.
yeah,
Who knows what they could have done? And basically, I looked like a young girl who loved her husband, wanted to protect her kids.
yeah, yeah,
So I was, I was okay with it. And luckily, I have such a strong center and I know who I am.
yeah,
But I
yeah.
was totally fine with it. Plus, I got the most beautiful girl in the world to play me, which I always say is a paradox because it's not always fun to be played by the most beautiful girl in the world that's 20 years younger than you.
Well, I
It's
actually,
okay.
and I'm not what we call blowing smoke here, Dr. Nay. I
Yeah.
actually can see, a
Yeah.
resemblance
Yeah.
between
It's
you.
fine.
And I totally get why they chose Margot Robbie to
Yeah. Yeah.
portray
No,
you.
I'm being funny. Yeah. We're talking about serious things, but I'm just sometimes I have to be funny. Yeah. So yes, you're very right in all the things that you just pointed out.
Yeah,
Um, yeah, but we know that the narcissist loves to control the narrative. So no surprise.
absolutely. Um, so, Dr. Nay, what happened in the end? Tell us about the discard or your escape, I should
Yes. Yes.
frame
Yes.
it as.
Yes.
Tell us about the end and I guess the aftermath of that.
Yeah,
And it's
so
who this.
yeah, I wasn't discarded, but a lot of my patients are, and it's
Yeah,
extraordinarily painful.
yeah,
It's horrible. Um, Either way, it's horrible. But I did escape, and the physical violence was like really one of my last straw moments. And then another last straw moment was when he did come out of rehab, because he did go to rehab and get sober, which was great. So that was a good thing that came of that. But when I tried to explain to him, said it was so hard, all the abuse, all the drug addiction, and he was like, it wasn't that bad. And that was it. I didn't know the word callousness back then, but something inside
oh,
of me
lack of
just closed.
empathy.
The lack of empathy, remorse, or compassion, that was it. And
Yeah,
so then he got arrested, and I knew that was my ticket to freedom because he had an ankle bracelet. And so I knew he couldn't harm me anymore. I knew he had no more power, right? The power imbalance shifted.
yes, yeah,
Once he got the ankle bracelet, I had the power.
yes,
My own, and I would never abuse the power like he did, but I was just like, I'm done.
yeah,
And I
yeah.
left.
You had reached that threshold. Were you able to separate the abuse from the drugs very quickly? Because often I hear of my clients thinking that, oh, the abuse is only because they're, they're an alcoholic, or maybe they have ADHD, or maybe that it's this, or maybe it's that. And then they find out when the drugs are gone, they're still
Yeah.
abusive. Yeah.
Yeah, he was definitely much better off the drugs. I will for sure say that. But there
Yeah.
still was control. But at that point, I was just so done. And we know now that drugs do not make an abuser. They can exacerbate the abuse,
Yeah.
right?
Exactly.
But
Yeah.
yeah, but they don't make an abuser. And honestly, what had happened back then was everybody was so focused on his addiction. He's an addict and you're codependent. And so, of course, I do as a self-reflective person, I'm like, I'm codependent, I'm codependent. I gotta fix myself, I gotta fix myself. I'm running
Mm.
around,
I hate
right?
that word when it comes to
I hate the word when it
victims.
comes
I
to
hate
this.
it. Yeah.
And I said, but his abuse and his addiction was never my problem. And how dare those people tell a young girl that? That didn't mean I didn't have things to work on. I went to a center, actually, I learned how to say no. I learned how to have boundaries. I learned, about my family of origin. But back then that was the model. And there's no way, and that's why I wrote my book, because it really turns the stigma on trauma bonds, and that abuse is always the fault of the abuser.
Yes. 100%.
Yep.
Gosh. Dr. Nay, just quickly, was there prolonged or any post-separation abuse that
No,
really impacted?
again, because the power imbalance shifted,
Yeah.
he was tied up with the FBI. I mean, he tried to get me back numerous times, but no, there really was not.
Yeah.
I was very
He
lucky
had a
in
lot
that.
to lose, I guess, if he
He acted out. I would have been like, you never see your kids again, right? But I would never do that to him. And as long as he was nice to me, which he was, I would say for
yeah.
the first 2 we really didn't have much contact. And then I moved to California with my children. And then he followed us there because he is a good dad
Yeah.
and he does love his children. And so no, because of that arrest, power imbalance shifted and we were able to be friends after time.
So you have a relationship of sorts with him now?
Yeah, today I don't really, because I don't think he's really, loving my all my new exploitation of everything.
Oh
Um,
yeah. I was a little bit shocked when you said we became friends, because I thought, oh, he's
yeah, but
not gonna like you telling
yeah,
putting
the story, yeah.
your spin out there
Right.
on
Yeah, no,
telling the truth.
but I didn't tell her for so long. All those years that I didn't say anything, we really did get along. And I made a very conscious choice to do that for my children.
Yeah,
You
yeah,
know, and I'm really glad that I did. I'm really glad I was able to, right? Because
yeah,
again, remember the power imbalance shifted.
yeah,
That was a huge piece of why we could be friends. And then I was very nice when the movie came out, when the book came out. I've always been very graceful about it all. And
yes.
then only recently, when I saw this real issue in society, and it just happened organically that I started to use the movie. And of course, he had some feelings about it. But I said, you know what? You wrote a book, you made a movie, I can make a 3-minute TikTok. That's just
Yeah, you make a movie about me, and you really don't have any kind of
that's right.
comeback if I talk about it. I fully
Right.
allowed to do that.
That's
God.
right. And you spoke about yourself as an addict and abuser. I'm now telling my perspective of that. And
Yeah,
so he had a hard time about it, but actually he has accepted it.
yeah. Oh, that's good. So, Dr. Nay, tell our followers or our listeners today about your book and what it
Yeah.
was like, writing about your trauma, and also, what it's going to reveal that we don't know about you, and how it will help them.
Yeah, so my book is really not a memoir. It's more of a clinical book where what I do is, of course, it's inspired by my personal life and my professional life, but what I do is I take 4 trauma bonded couples and I describe them in the beginning of the book. And then I explain what a trauma bond is. I explain the personality of the pathological partner. I go into the different personalities of the victim. That's the first section. In the second section, I go into, what do I go into? The emotional scars that the victim gets, why women leave, because it's mostly women, but there are men too, how to leave safely. And then the third section is all how to heal. And so I weave all those clinical stories. I mean, I weave the stories with the clinical material to make it come to life.
Yeah. Oh my
Yeah.
goodness. Yeah. And the stories, obviously you wouldn't be putting any names in there because
Of course, yes, all made
are they based on real
on my practice. They're
on
all
your
based on my
practice?
practice.
Yes.
Yeah, and they're very gripping, and the way I write about them is very gripping. So I have, like there are some breathing exercises, here are some grounding exercises, right? Because I want the reader, you've just been in it or just coming out of it, you can get triggered, right? So I'm also talking to them throughout the book saying, take your time with this, put this down if this feels like too much. But what has been so beautiful, because when you write a book, who knows if it's good or not, right? I mean, I had no idea. It was the hardest thing I've ever done. I don't even know
Yeah.
why I did it.
I'm hearing you. I've
You
written
get
a
it.
book.
It's the,
Yeah.
yeah, it's
You
so
never know where
hard.
it's going to go.
You never know. But what's been beautiful and so meaningful for me is that women from all over the world have said, thank you for seeing me. Thank you for validating me.
Yeah.
Thank you for putting words to things that I didn't understand. And I don't feel crazy anymore. I've left him, or the police are here because of your book. Like all of these amazing direct messages that I've gotten.
Yeah.
And what I believe is that education empowers, and what we can name, we can tame. And
Yeah.
so it's been a lot of work promoting it. It was a lot of work writing it. But I think you and I are in really very deep alignment that we want to help people.
Yeah.
We don't want people to be tortured by people that are supposedly love them.
Absolutely. And there's unfortunately not too many, well, not enough, I should say, mental health professionals out there
Correct.
who truly understand it. And I think that's because this type of often very covert, insidious abuse is
Yes.
virtually impossible to really understand. It can come off like you're sounding very trivial, if you haven't been through it, it's nearly impossible to understand it. And I don't know what kind of impression you get, but I get the impression from my clients that there's just instant relief, and they instantly know that you get it. You
Yeah.
get it, and you
Yes, and I
understand the
believe
dynamic.
them. And,
Yeah.
I have fellow clinicians here, Dr. Christine Cocciola, who works with the women, their children, right?
Yes, I had
Is
Dr. Christina, and
she's
oh,
amazing. Amy.
Amy. Oh, sorry,
Yes,
Amy. I had Dr. Christina
yes,
and Amy on a few weeks ago. Yeah,
yes. They're
incredible
amazing.
book.
We
Yeah,
have we have a real pet peeve about therapists re-traumatizing women that come in, not
yeah,
believing them, or couples therapists. I even did a video about this.
yeah.
If you're a couples therapist and you see coercive control going on, you better take a bias and you better protect the victim,
Yes.
right? This like, oh, I don't have a bias in couples therapy. No. First of all, it can be contraindicated if there's physical abuse, but no, have a bias.
Yeah,
Call the person out, protect the
yeah.
victim. They'll
And
stop
you'll
gas.
soon know because
Yeah,
that
therapists
it's
have to
called,
stop gaslighting victims.
yeah. And the abuser, once you call them out, once they perceive that criticism from you, you're going to see that massive difference
Exactly.
anyway, which hopefully will be a bit of a tiny eye opener for the victim at
That's
least.
right. That's
Yeah.
right. That's right. And I don't do couples therapy anymore. I
No,
mostly,
neither do I.
yeah, it just, you can't really do it with what we do. Yeah, I love my work, and I just, it just feels very meaningful, and I feel very blessed that I get to do it every day. And, to say to women, I know you feel like you're literally living in hell and there's no way out, but there is.
There is, and you are the absolute shining role model for that. You can heal, guys, after this type of trauma, after narcissistic abuse, coercive control, and Dr. Nay has been through it, and we've seen, I guess just a small portion, which was pretty awful in the movie Wolf of Wall Street. So, Dr. Nay, just before we end this episode, is there anything, just some last thoughts or words you wanted to say to people who may not be quite ready to leave their abuser, or if they have left, they're still feeling that the throes of that trauma bond, and they're craving their abuser again?
Craving it. So, yeah, well, first of all, for the person that's craving the abuser, that's so common after trauma bond, and it's really an atypical trauma symptom specifically to this sort of relationship. And what I say to my girls is, you can't see this person as Romeo and Dirty John. They were one manipulative, pathological person. The
Yeah.
good part was manipulative. Do not believe that the good part was ever good. It was all a manipulation. And I always say to them, I'm going to say something very hard to you, but I really want you to hear me. So I want to leave, if you're craving for them, you have to know that the good part was all a manipulation. And I'm sorry to say that,
Yes.
but
Yeah.
it's true. And then the second thing is that if you're, listening and you're like, oh God, this sounds like me, this could be me, it's okay. It's okay. Look for the helpers.
Look for
Look
the
for the
helpers.
helpers. Do not isolate, because
Yeah.
resilience can't be created in isolation.
Yeah.
Look for the helpers, get educated, read our books, just get educated. Social media is now a wonderful vehicle for that. I post about it every single day. And look for the helpers, get educated, and you will find your way out.
Yeah.
It's so possible. I know
Yeah.
it feels a crazy Herculean task, but it can happen one step at a time, one day at a time. And if you're really leaving and you're married and you have kids, do not let them see you coming.
Yeah.
You have to make an internal thing inside of you, like, I'm going to leave, and then plan behind the scenes.
Yeah.
Because once you tell them,
Yeah.
game on.
That's it. I say exactly the same things to my clients, Dr. Nay. You keep those cards very close to your chest, because once
Very
they
close.
know, all bets are off, and you know the drill. Names will come off, properties, money will disappear.
Right.
You'll
Smear
lose
campaign.
grandma's ring because it'll just be gone. Anything sentimental, they'll get rid of.
Exactly.
Yeah. Develop a
Yeah.
safety plan. Yeah, great advice. Oh my goodness. I just want to thank you so much, Dr. Nay. Now, for your time, for telling us about your story, your trauma, but also your healing journey, and now how you are helping other women to heal. It's just such an incredible, inspiring story. So thank you so much for being here. Now, just quickly, do you see clients like outside of the States?
Yeah, I see. So yeah, so I work with women all over the world.
Yeah,
Um, yeah, you
yeah.
know,
Because
I just
I,
listen, first and foremost, I'm a clinician, right? I'm a therapist and I love what I do.
yeah,
And my Instagram and my social media, that's just a way to reach a broader audience, right?
yeah.
But yes, first and foremost, I'm a clinician.
Wonderful. Yeah, because I have many clients in the US, but I know, the rules are
Oh
slightly.
yeah, no, no, because I just say to them, I work with you onto my PhD. That's
Okay.
it.
So
Yeah.
the reason I ask this is there might be, people out there who want to contact you. So
Yeah, just go to my Instagram. It's the real Dr. Nadine. I answer all my own direct messages until I can't. I answer them all, or go to my website, drnae.com. There's so many free resources. I have a trauma bond assessment, a pathological lover assessment. And also there's a form there you can reach me, but yeah, I'm very accessible.
Wow. And also a link to your book, which I intend
Oh, my
to
book. Yes, yes,
very
and my
soon.
book. Get it on my website too, or Amazon, or all the places books are sold.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Once again, thank you, Dr. Nay. It's been an amazing chat discussion, and hopefully we'll stay in touch and I'll talk to you
I would
again
love it.
soon.
Yes. Thank you so much
Okay.
for having me.
Thank you. And that brings us to the end of another Fake Love and Flying Monkeys episode. I hope you enjoyed that as much as I enjoyed speaking with Dr. Nay, guys. She is such an inspirational woman. Please don't forget to get her book so you can find out more information, get more inspiration from the ex-wife of the real Wolf of Wall Street. On that note, guys, if you would like to have a one-on-one counseling session with me, please just see my website link in the description. I'd love to be able to support you through a Zoom counseling session, no matter where you are in the world. And of course, don't forget to get your copy of my best-selling book, Fake Love, Understanding and Healing from Narcissistic Abuse. Please rate the podcast and share, guys. That's the best thing you can do to keep going. And until the next episode, remember, you are worthy of love, and you are worthy of so much more than a lifetime of fake love and flying monkeys.